did you actually do that? So you just shared with us how you unified the brand. And then what did you do from there?
So one thing that we did was introduce the brand values. And the next step was to cascade the values across the organization and make sure that employees were living the brand and living the values. And we produced a program called the ADNOC Way. And the ADNOC Way today is our ongoing change program, which allows people to understand and digest the values, to associate the values with their own personal goals in relation to the company's higher purpose or objectives, and then to fundamentally represent the brand. And this is an ongoing program that we run through a multi-phased strategy that's ongoing.
Thanks, and we'll come back to more of that later. Tiffin?
Yeah, great. Hi, I'm Tiffin Jernstedt. I lead communications at PVH, and like Maril had mentioned, we own Calvin Klein, Tommy Hilfiger, Speedo, and about 10 other brands. And our journey has been about who is PVH. And I joined the company at the parent company level 5 years ago. And so we had to articulate who we were as an organization, and we had an unbelievable history. As you can see on the slides, we went public in 1920. We've been around for almost 138 years. We employ 38,000 associates. And even our associate population did not know the story of the parent company, didn't know the history, had a lot of assumptions about the company that we had to get through. So the last 10 years, our company has transformed significantly. We were primarily a domestic company, and just recently went global around 6 years ago, and that was because of our last acquisition. We also were primarily a holding company, and again, because of now that we own and operate globally, we are now more of a parent company. And that shift has really been, again, the last 6 years. At the parent company level, we have invested in launching functions and areas of expertise significantly. So ranging from consumer insights to expanding about 7 areas of HR. We launched the first communications function at the parent company level that me and my team are leading. And also areas like denim of areas of excellence in our Amsterdam office. So all of these investments have significantly changed how we talk about the company and really how we talk about the culture. And now we have 80% of our associates are in offices that are multi-branded. So the offices have been going through really an identity crisis because all over the world there was a dedicated Calvin Klein offices, dedicated Tommy Hilfiger offices, and because when we bought our last acquisition, we became global and we're operating, those offices now became one. So then that makes you a PVH office. So the challenge there was, who was PVH? Because at the parent company, they never articulated their story. Honestly, we had an annual report. We were stock ticker symbol, and a website that the company called an investor site. And that was about it. So when I joined 5 years ago, we were charged with, we had to create a narrative. We had to talk about our history, which was very challenging. And we obviously worked with all of our partners in legal to go, how do you talk about an over 140-year-old history of the company? So culturally, which has been really interesting. I came from our brands, so I worked for Tommy Hilfiger twice, most recently in the Amsterdam office where I stood up the first global communications function. I also worked at Calvin Klein. So I knew, coming from the brands, that there was no identity to the parent company. You literally never talked about PVH unless something happened with your computer, I think. It was like negative. So when I joined the parent company and I started learning about our history and all of the offerings that we have and learning development opportunities and everything that we do in CR from sustainability and human rights, I said to my bosses, we have a lot to talk about besides our finances. And that's primarily what they did. They just focused in the financial community. Our CEO is literally called the godfather of apparel, but just in that group. So we've spent a lot of time educating our leadership that we're more than just our finances. So what we've done is we had to take on the biggest challenges. We were a parent company. I always like to explain it that we were an umbrella brand with a lot of holes in it. And we had household brands that were kind of under us. And that was hard to talk about. It was hard for the brands because when they talked about who the parent company was, they had to they had to go the whole story, and vice versa, just like how I had to introduce myself. So how we started that was just creating the narrative. So the first wave of our narrative was literally who is PVH. That was our video, that was our messaging. We wanted to be very direct and just address that we know we haven't been talking about ourselves, so this is who we are. Soon after, we used We Are PVH, and it was really a hashtag, and the entire organization embraced it, and that was really our rally cry. That was when we all come together, this is what we can achieve. Now we're about to launch our new corporate narrative April 10th, so please follow on our channels, is the power of PVH. And that became very natural because as we all explained who we are as a company, you naturally said, well, yeah, when we all come together, we do X. So that's in philanthropy, that's in business, even from associates, when we all bring them together, you really see that power come to life. Our second challenge was everyone's in different stages talking about their culture, their purpose, their EVP, so that's at the parent company level, and then the brands. And that's challenging because we were in these different stages and who goes first and how should it be structured. So we worked with Maril and Molly, who's here at Gagen MacDonald, and their team, and we created a culture, freedom, and the framework. And most of the work was honestly about alignment. In our company, everyone was using different words. Is it a mission and is it a purpose? We had values, some had brand values. It was very complicated, and it didn't have to be as complicated. So that exercise really just helped simplify, and we all agreed on the different components of the framework. And then we also agreed that we'll share the same values. Because what also was challenging is there was a lot of initiatives and programming, and like what Maril said, the systems that were across the organization, but some were smaller, they were tucked into a department, or maybe one of the brands was doing it, or maybe one of the regions was doing it. Nothing was cohesive, or it hadn't come together. So at the enterprise level, we have launched, PVH University, which is very new. It's only about 2 years old. We launched Inclusion and Diversity, which allowed for I&D councils across the organization, as well as business resource groups. And for our world, that's quite new. So our business resource groups are really about a year old. And they've allowed a bunch of activity, and now they're going global. So how did we bring the culture to life? We are so challenged from an environment perspective. Because we are in the cities, we don't have campuses. We were still in this identity crisis where in Europe, for example, was primarily Tommy offices, but in Asia, we primarily had Calvin offices. So literally all around the world, one brand kind of dominated the other. So when we brought everyone together, and now you're talking about PVH, and as I mentioned earlier, we didn't have a lot of collateral or assets or information to talk about the company. So we really relied on communication platforms, which we also did not have at the enterprise level. So in the last couple years, we've launched 10 communication platforms. 2 of those are our internal and external career site, because we consider those a communication platform. And we also launched a news app just recently where we targeted our non-wires. And for our world, that's our retail associates. They were always so separate from the company. So even though we're 38,000 globally, we're really only 12,000 at corporate. So that's a huge amount of associates that we are not connected to. We had a lot of pushback from the brands because several people said, retail associates don't care about the parent company. Why would they want to know any information from the parent company? We also had pushback on a Tommy retail associate. They don't want to know anything about the Calvin brand, and vice versa. When we launched the app, everyone was proven wrong because what it did was it actually connected everybody. And because of the business structure, even the retail associates, a lot of our stores are now next to each other. So they were talent sharing, problem solving together. If there was an issue happening in one of the stores, the other store would come and help. So when you gave them a platform, people just jumped on it. And it was opt-in, so we got around a lot of those rules. Are you paying your associates to learn about company information or not? So because it was opt-in, it was on your mobile device. And instantly, we had retail associates all over the world talk about PVH. And I thought that was such a great reminder that people do know about you. We're all over. Maybe we have to communicate a little bit more, but you have to give them an opportunity. The other challenge that we still battle is what's a brand initiative versus a corporate initiative. So recently, Tommy Hilfiger had an unbelievable partnership with TED. And so they had Tommy at TED partnership. It was based out of the Amsterdam office, but it was global. And initially, they only wanted to invite Tommy Hilfiger associates to participate. In the regions, they're all multi-branded offices. And the reality is, I don't know about your email distro list, but ours are not clean. So you physically could not target an associate that only works on one brand. And we also didn't like the idea of why are we alienating one group over a really exciting opportunity. So the rule simply was just we invite everybody, and it's opt in and opt out. If you're a Calvin person and you don't want to be a part of a Tommy program, then don't participate. Long story short, we had unbelievable participation across the organization and the brands. On the flip side, PVH, we're a recent partnership for the Pride March, and that started because our new business resource group, WERK, they're W-E-R-K, to support LGBTQ community. They pitched our CEO to sponsor the New York Pride March, and he said yes. And he said, if we're going to do it, then let's go big. So we were a platinum sponsor. I got the call the next day, and I said, oh, so our leadership doesn't think that PVH is a brand, but now we're going to have a float down Fifth Avenue. But I accepted that challenge because I was very excited about it. But some people in the brands were very sensitive and said, why is this PVH? It should be the brands. No one knows who PVH is. And they wanted the float and the T-shirts to be their brands. So we had a lot of internal discussions say, no, this is a PVH moment because we're bringing all of our associates together. And at our first March, we had 800 associates show up, which was triple than anyone else. We actually were like a block and a half in the city. Now the city changed the rule, now they capped it to 400. But that was a good example of where the parent company, that was our opportunity to come out. And now we're 3 years into it. It's World Pride this month in New York, in June in New York. And we have over 15 countries participating. So the next is I wanted to show you a video. It's all from our news app, which our partner is Social Course. And I thought it'd be interesting for you all to see a range of engagement programs. Some are very simple. It was one idea we activated that day, and you can see the engagement. Others are a little bit more complicated, 2 weeks fundraising. So we'll check it out. Thank you.
Thanks, Tiffin. And I think, and you gave us some great examples, again, of using the brand to create a common culture. Mm-hmm. And because I know it was a really crazy experience to take some of these brands that were started by iconic designers, and, Tommy, of course, is still with us. Mm-hmm. Now, I guess not technically with you, but he's with us. Yes. And you just think of the incredible personalities, and then to find a way for everybody to come together at PVH as one family versus the individual personalities of the brands, and still maintaining those was really incredible.
Yeah, I think with our branding, you have, Calvin Klein, white and black, sexy, modern, provocative, and you had Tommy Hilfiger, red, white, and blue, smiles, family, and lifestyle. And that's why you had that identity crisis happen in these offices. The two now have to come together, and because PVH hadn't articulated our brand, it made it very difficult. So it's gotten much better, but we're really just getting started.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Bill?
Great, congratulations. Good afternoon, everyone. Great to be back up here on the Page stage. I have a very, very different story to tell from my two predecessors, mm-hmm. And we'll end with a video that is about as far away from an Abu Dhabi video as you can possibly get. I'm excited to talk to you about a new job that I have running brand and communications at United Rentals, which is about as far away from the tech space where I've made my living for the last 20 years as you can get. And much of what I'm going to show you very briefly about our culture is nothing to do with work that I've done. I've been with the business now 122 days. Who's counting? So I'm excited to tell you about a culture that I discovered. People told me that there was a great culture inside this company, but I didn't really believe it till I got there. So let me tell you a little bit about United Rentals. We are in the construction equipment rental business. Our primary customers build large buildings and shopping centers and help with the maintenance of some of the largest plants represented by many of the brands sitting in this room. How big is United Rentals? Well, we're the #1 equipment rental provider in the world, and we're only in North America. There's 650,000 pieces of equipment in our fleet worth $14 billion. We have annual revenue of about $9 billion, with a great group of 18,000 employees, of which about 17,000 are service technicians, mechanics, and truck drivers who deliver this equipment every day. We get 11,000 calls for rental equipment each day. So this is a big fleet of equipment, 650,000 pieces of equipment under rent, and we're touching almost every construction project and plant in North America. Pretty exciting business, one I didn't understand till I came in. Now, this business has grown dramatically in the last 10 years, largely through an enormous roll-up of acquisitions. So when you talk about culture, then you really talk about the challenge of bringing so many people into a core business and getting them to work together. And during that period of roll-up, from 8,000 to 18,000 employees, we've actually more than doubled the revenue of rentals per employee. That's one of our core measurement goals. So while doing this roll-up, we're dramatically improving the business. And while it's not on the slide, I can share with you here in the meeting, and I would appreciate it if you don't tweet it, in an environment where we have 130 different union organizing units spread across these branches. So we're in an environment where culture can either be an enormous push and pro thing for the business, or it can be an enormous risk. Now, a lot of that is underpinned by very strong values. All of us in this room talk about the values at our business, but what I've discovered in this new job is this is a company that takes very seriously its people and safety. When our CEO talks about our competitive differentiator, he could easily talk about the fact that we're the biggest, that we have the biggest fleet. He talks about our people because it is a competitive advantage for us because of how hard we work to make sure that our employees work together as a team. And some of the stats that you see here on the slide, anybody in this room would want. 10% turnover, unheard of. And that's in a labor market where mechanics and truck drivers are in very short or very high demand. The amount of referrals that we get from employees to bring new people into the business is at 40%, which is pretty amazing. And our engagement scores, something we measure all the time, are as a very impressive 93%. And I can talk openly about how excited I am about it because none of this was my work. This all existed when I got here. So the work that I now need to do to transform the business's message and our brand position in the market is made so much easier because our employees believe that they work at a great company. And when you look at our one example, one measurement, we use Glassdoor ratings, one of many measurements. 95% of our employees approve of the CEO. We're about to change leaders. They like the new guy even better. So when we look at, because he came in from the inside, I shouldn't say, but we have a great CEO. We're going to have an even better CEO next round. Don't tweet that one, please. But we measure ourselves versus our nearest competitors, and our nearest competitor is only half of our size, but they're coming fast. So culture is really, really important. So last topic I want to cover really briefly is how we enable this culture. Once you get a good culture going, once you get it going, our job as communicators and leaders of the business is to get out of the way and let the culture drive itself. One of the ways that the company did that about 18 months ago was to take a product by Facebook called Workplace. Most of you have heard of Workplace. And despite all the challenges that Facebook has in the public market, in the corporate environment, behind the firewall, this is an outstanding product for a couple of reasons. One, it's enormously flexible, but probably most important, it's familiar to our employees. They use Facebook in their personal lives, so the opportunity to immediately like, share, come together in groups is just natively in place. They're already familiar with Facebook. And so they jumped on this platform. Today, we have 10,500 of our 11,000 people on Facebook, which the Workplace team at Facebook says way and above the normal and expected participation. And workplace gives us the ability, more importantly, gives our employees the ability to gather together in groups, more than 200. We have a group for all employees we called You Are Proud, but for example, our truck drivers have a Truck Drivers at United group, and they share pictures of their trucks and their experiences on the road. Our service technicians show pictures of the equipment that they're working on so they can share techniques about how to solve a problem on a particular type of equipment. So we get a productivity benefit as well as a culture benefit. Now, there are plenty of people in this room, and we can talk about this at the Q&A period, that talk about, gee, if you open it up too much, does that open up the opportunity for concern? Does it open up the opportunity for unrest to breed? We don't see that at all. And we don't see that because the culture is already strong. What we use Workplace for is to enable that culture to grow faster and stronger. Now, I'd like to close by telling you a little bit of a story about how our culture works, leveraging Workplace, that is so far different from what Omar showed you. I think that you may even feel slightly uncomfortable. We have something at United Rentals called the Compassion Fund. It's a fabulous thing. Employees can make a payroll deduction. It's dollars that go into a pool of money so that if an employee has a fire in their home, the company can write them a check. The company matches those funds. We put dollars in as well. When the hurricane took place on the Gulf Coast, dozens of our employees were completely lost their homes. So this is our employees taking care of each other. We wanted to drive further involvement of the Compassion Fund. We're always looking for opportunities to do that. One of our employees, a guy by the name of David McKinley, who is a Texas truck driver, took it upon himself to be a champion of the Compassion Fund. David, who drives a 55-foot-long tractor trailer delivering equipment all day, has a companion with him in the truck. His name is Mr. Chicken. Now, Mr. Chicken is just a little doll that David shows off in his posts on Facebook. And Mr. Chicken has become so popular inside the company that there are even buttons that says Mr. Chicken for President of Workplace. David had this idea to get people involved in something related to Mr. Chicken that he thought would drive involvement in the Compassion Fund, and so roll the video.
All right. By the way, what y'all just saw, you can't unsee. Anyhow, me and Mr. Chicken just want to talk to y'all about the Compassion Fund. That was the United Compassion Fund Shuffle.
Welcome to the chicken coop. What's going on in here?
Shout out to all y'all. Mr. Chicken, he loves all y'all. Thanks for your support and everything for the company. It ain't for me, it ain't for Mr. Chicken. It's for the company and our communities. Anywho, y'all have a good day. We'll talk at you later on. Mr. Chicken got to roll on.
Now, I'm proud to tell you that corporate communications had absolutely nothing to do with that. But here's the lesson. This is an employee taking something on his own. We provided a technology platform for it to happen. Now, what happened as a result of this? More than 40 videos were posted by employees on their own. Nobody pushed them to do that. We proved that our employees, who are tough, gruff service workers, are really lousy dancers. But we added almost 2,000 people to the Compassion Fund and drove an enormous employee engagement, and it all happened organically. So what's the takeaway from this? In any kind of environment, our job as communications people is to foster culture, and when culture gets good, get the heck out of the way and let them do it. And I guarantee you, you will hear that song in your head for the next 6 hours, and I apologize. Thank you very much.
Yeah. I think that is a really interesting example, though, because the communication police didn't show up to say, oh, you know, not good enough or not right, or you just saw how viral it went. It was really amazing. And
those were, by the way, the best of the worst.
when we had talked, one of the things you'd mentioned is that really struck you, being new to the company, is how everyone talks about the company and my colleagues have my back. And can you just talk a little bit about that?
Well, I think we work in a business that is inherently very dangerous. I think this is true in the oil business as well. Our fashion is dangerous too. Did I pick the right tie? You know, we get people that get hurt on the job. They're at job sites every day. We lost an employee last year. There is a camaraderie among our people to have each other's backs simply because of the safety issue. But this kind of culture makes doing M&A really easy because the people that come in immediately are welcomed. I've never felt more welcomed at a company than I have at United Rentals. And after spending 20 years in tech, it's a little intimidating to go into the construction business. Where's Charlene Wheelis? She'll tell you that it is a completely different world. Yeah. And what I've discovered is when culture gets to that level, amazing things can happen at a business. It doesn't hurt that we're the #1 company, that our revenue is growing, that our profitability is really high. But at the end of the day, people love going to work. They're passionate about, as you can see, they're passionate about what they do, and that's pretty exciting.
Thank you. And I'm going to open, as soon as we have questions, I'm going to open it to the audience because I know we don't have a lot of time. So just want to make sure that we have a chance to get some questions in. So I'll keep an eye out for that. So how are you guys handling measurement with your culture?
I'll go. To do it?
Yes.
We're so new at our journey that literally we're starting from scratch. So we are being a little bit more loose on how we're measuring, and just we're staying focused on actually getting these initiatives off the ground, let them live, and then go from there. Now we're at a point, because of our new platforms and technology, that we can measure more, appropriately. But that's a lot of it, is just get it done.
Yeah.
Yeah, so from an ADNOC perspective, measurement wasn't in place, evidently, up until the first time we conducted a group-wide pulse survey was in 2016 that helped us set a baseline for how the organization felt. And we just conducted another one last year. I think most importantly about metrics is coming to terms with what the data shows you. A lot of the times around the table, it turns into a finger-pointing exercise of, well, no, it's not us, it's the line managers and so on. So metrics are only as good as how willing you are to accept them and your ability to take them and translate them into action and into programs. And if they're not, and they're just kind of swept under the rug, then they're fundamentally futile. But at ADNOC, we've been forming our change program specifically around the metrics. And sometimes the metrics show that there's some fundamentals that are lacking in the business. A lot of times as communicators, we come and we say, let's message this, let's talk about this. But for my perspective as an organization, we start identifying gaps, fundamental gaps in the organization. And what we've done, we've taken upon ourselves to help these teams deliver solutions that will help address these gaps. And so metrics can be used as a form to shape your messaging and address challenges, or even to step in as communications professionals in the voice of reason and as integrators to support parts of the business that need help in delivering the foundations of the business.
So you saw some of the metrics on the slides. Listen, I'll tell you what works at our company. If it's not working, first of all, David's going to tell us. But I think the message for all of us, get the hell out of the corporate office. Get out to the plant site in our area. Get out to the branches. Talk to people. but more importantly, listen. We can put all the tools in place, and we should, so that we get a trend analysis and we look for spot stuff. But it's been my experience through the years in a communications role, you got to get out and talk to employees face to face and really listen and develop a network to get that done. We can't hide behind the tools. So I think that would be an important takeaway.
Thank you. Jim?
Thanks, Maril. One of the hoped-for metrics of when you have a roll-up of brands or a high-profile brand campaign is a higher multiple in your stock price. And so I'm curious to know if the multiple for PVH, particularly you two, if the multiple for the stock went up, and how you correlated that with the brand campaign, and also the efforts of your investor relations department and your CEO in being obviously brand ambassadors and coordinating all that.
I don't think my CEO is ready for that question. Again, we never communicated outside of our finances at our company, so I don't think we would make that correlation right now. I think as the communication teams and the HR teams, especially with talent and recruitment, we see that. But we're still educating our C-suite to be talking more about our culture in full.
Some of the Wall Street people we talk to, they struggle to understand our business because the rental business is so unique. We are one of the first true sharing economy companies. We talk about the strength of our people as a competitive differentiator. Is very difficult to tie that to share price, except for one important factor. And it sounds very basic to say it, but engaged employees and happy employees are productive employees. And we can show Wall Street all of the measures around productivity, use of equipment, downtime. Very important they look at the issue of turnover. And those measures contribute to the total story that we tell Wall Street. We're about to undergo a brand transformation. We're not going to change the company name, but we're going to start to reposition the company more towards a service business and not just our core rental business. So we've got a lot of work to do, and I'd love to answer that question in 18 months. My hope is that what we do will continue to build on it. We're fortunate. We've got a very strong stock performance to start with. So the fundamentals are all in place, but they're not directly tied, but they are strong contributors. Good question, though. Thank you.
I don't see anybody. Okay, as you've been looking at what you're doing, and Bill, this would be harder for you to answer, but perhaps just from your new point of view, what would you do differently now? You're each in different stages of your culture. You have a very established one and like more emerging one, and Tiffin, you've just really gotten going. Is there anything that you could think of that you'd undo?
So from my perspective is we made promises to employees that we didn't deliver on. What I mean by that is when we ran the change program, there are four, let's say, action areas that we focused on and communicated. It was performance, profitability, efficiency, and people. We delivered on performance, profitability, and efficiency, and the metrics show it. But for people, we fell short. We told a good story, but the business didn't deliver. And when you do that, leadership loses credibility, and then employees lose trust in you. And this is where the authenticity item is so important. And so if I was going to do things differently, and in fact, this is an ongoing journey, is have a risk matrix for your internal activities. You have a risk matrix externally. You need to have a perception and reputational risk matrix internally as well. If you're not going to deliver on what you say you are, or you don't have the fundamental pillars, then you need to address that. And so these are, from my perspective, having an internal risk matrix is something to consider, and we will do this year.
I think for us, if I could go back the last 5 years, when we were launching our platforms before we had the full narrative and the story down. So we've been, identifying our levers. We've had a lot of internal alignment that had to happen, of course, with the complexity of our organization between the brands and the regions and the parent company. Now that we're launching this new narrative, like I mentioned, it's so much stronger, and now we have a place to put it. But if I could go back in time, I'd have tried to figure that out and then launch the communication platforms.
Well, we're out of time, so I would just say I wish I had joined sooner. That's what I would have done differently. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it. You go this way.